First of all, us being Remedy, I'm going to cover quickly how do we create brands, how do we approach creating global franchises, which is our mission. Then I'll talk a little bit more about digital distribution. Where do we see, as an old school console developer, where do we see the market going? What are the challenges for us and what are the opportunities for game developers in Finland? As digital distribution really has changed radically the landscape. And finally, I'll say a couple of words about the direction where we think things are headed, what's important for us, how do we see things from a market perspective. But before going into that, I just wanted to say a big thanks for Kari, Mari, and all the people at Tekes who have been working on Skene Games Refuel. It means a lot for Finnish game developers, it means a lot for our industry in Finland, and it's amazing to see this kind of acknowledgement from the government. So let's give them a big hand. Our mission at Remedy is to create global franchises. I will not spend a lot of time talking about our background, but I will call out a couple of key milestones for us over the years. One of the things we take a lot of pride in is that we don't do a lot of stuff. In fact, we do very few things at large. If you look at the games that we've done in the previous 16, almost 17 years, well, that's just a handful of games. Only a few games that we've ever shipped. In fact, looking at them more closely, there's only 3 franchises that we've ever worked with. Yet these franchises, if you count the Max Payne movie, count the DVDs, everything included, the comic books, novels, whatnots, have in total created more than $500 million in revenue, which is not bad for a small company in Finland. So, we don't do a lot of things. The one thing that we do is search for information wherever it's available. A less known fact about our company is that on our board of directors we have Ilkka Paananen, ex-Digital Chocolate fame, now Supercell fame, as an expert of how free-to-play works. Watching Ilkka's work with their latest releases, the blockbusters that they created that have done extremely well on top-crossing charts, has been inspiring. We also, of course, have Aki Järvilehto, the Executive Vice President of Rovio. That's a fairly well-known company in Finland that doesn't need probably anything in terms of elaboration. The starting point for the franchises that we create has been very simple. Typically, we always begin with a character-centric concept. This is a well-established way of creating brands, and it's family out, in fact, already from comic books of 30s, 40s, and 50s. If you think about franchises like Batman or Spider-Man that still today are delivering blockbuster results, the format has always been simple. You create a franchise, a product, a brand, where everything supports the centric character. You give that character recognizable visual traits. Spider-Man wears, well, funny kind of suit as does Batman, but you make those characters very easily recognizable, very rememberable characters that stick in your mind, if you will. We've tried to do the same with Max Payne, a fugitive undercover cop that's trying to revenge the murder of his family in New York. Very simple, almost oversimplified characters in that sense. With Max Payne 2, we were able to do higher production values than with Max Payne 1 that we started with. But really, there's another trait that we always do with our games. We focus on one feature that no one's really, in our opinion, doing extraordinarily well. With Max Payne, it was bullet time. With Alan Wake, it was the use of light that differentiated the game. And then we focus and focus and focus and figure out ways. How do we turn that element, how do we turn that one thing, that one USP, into a gameplay element, into something that's central to the brand and franchise that we create? We're strong believers that you should never put lipstick on a pig. In other words, you should never first create the game or create the brand, and then give it out to the marketing department that tries to figure out how do we spin this, how do we treat this in the best possible light. That just doesn't feel genuine, that just doesn't feel right. People see through it, and you have to plan things from the get-go. The last thing that we do, which is very visible in Alan Wake, is that we put our games, our franchises, our brands, typically always in real-world locations. There are many reasons why we do this, but most importantly, it's something that's very recognizable for the global mainstream audience. It allows us to do things like draw into current elements of popular culture. With Alan Wake, it was Stephen King and Lost that were the inspiration behind our writer that was struggling to fight against his own nightmares. With Max Payne, it was John Woo that was a large part of the inspiration of the game itself. And this way, for the wider audience, it's very easy to snap into the frame of mind. I get this, I understand this. The locations feel familiar, the situation feels familiar, and the brand will start to live its own life. And that can be quite a long shelf life. If you look at Max Payne 3, which came out earlier this year, it's been almost a decade and a half that that franchise has been out there. With Alan Wake, we first introduced Alan Wake already in 2005, that's 7 years ago. So the cycles are really, really long in this part of the industry. However, a lot of things are changing. Everything, in fact, from our perspective, is changing right now and has been changing over the last couple of years. It's actually quite amazing if you think how fast digital distribution has changed the landscape. 3 years ago, 2008, when Apple first introduced iPhone, when Apple first created the App Store, they fundamentally changed the dynamics of the industry. There are a few examples anywhere in the world where you'd see such a total fundamental change. From a developer's point of view, back in the past, in the previous world that we lived in, it was very clear that a developer would only see 5, 10, 15% of the revenue created by their brands, by their games, their creations. In fact, it was worse than that. Typically, a publisher. Can you please turn that up? Typically, a publisher would deduct all their expenses first. Well, they probably deduct all their cousins' expenses and everyone they met at the trade show before the developer would see a dime. With the digital channels, the developer in most of these channels receives 70% of the revenue available. And that's just huge. Any industry where you completely change the value chain is bound to see some kind of dramatic things happen. And that's what we're witnessing with local brands like Rovio just rocketing and doing amazing things almost overnight. One more important thing as a console developer to understand is that previously, something we now take for granted wasn't previously possible. Previously, you couldn't actually self-publish your game. Even if you'd fully fund your game, even if you'd have, let's say you take venture capital money and spend a couple $1 million on creating an amazing console game in 2008 or 2007, even then you'd need a publisher to guarantee premium placement on Walmart or GameStop or similar stores. And publishers would not necessarily sign these games. There's many real-life examples which we know about where developers have spent anything between $2 to $4 million creating their own games, and publishers have gone, no, not feeling it, and turned them down. Because in order to be successful, in order to get that premium placement in Walmart, you'd still need to spend $5 million or $10 million in marketing expenses. So the change has been quite total. Now we can self-fund our own games. Now we can publish them in different channels. And if you look at the channels that we have available, boy, is it amazing. There's Apple's App Store. There are channels like Google Play, which is literally a single-click publishing process where they'll terminate your application using kill switch afterwards if needed. There are channels like XBLA, PSN, and so on, Steam on PC side, that are relatively easy, compared to the previous world at least, to access, that are doing amazing financial results for developers all over the world. I think it's an amazing situation for Finnish developers. I'm really hoping to see that as Skene moves forward, we're going to see a lot more new companies publishing their own games in these channels. Well, a less known fact, or something that people have perhaps paid less attention to, is that in digital world, advertising doesn't really work that well. Advertising is possible, of course, but when you compare it to the previous world of the console development, there's an amazing change that has taken place. Previously, it used to be about how do I get the publisher to spend $10 million on my game? How do I get that guaranteed Christmas blockbuster treatment? And nowadays, that just on iOS doesn't make any sense anymore. Small new companies, newcomers like Supercell, are able to release their games and rock the charts, do super well on those charts. If you look at blockbusters this summer, CSR Racing, a small game that arguably, or has been claimed to do $12 million in revenue for the first month. Again, a smaller developer called Natural Motion, no major publisher behind. So the fact that advertising doesn't translate well, the fact that it's very, very expensive to spend money on user acquisition, is something that certainly helps us as developers. It means that the rules have changed into a more level playing field, and it means that more and more it is the gamers who really decide. It is the quality of the games that still today is the most important single driver in order to be successful on these platforms. Sure, there's a lot of things to even the odds. There's a lot of things that you can do, cross-promotion, different kind of networks, free App-A-Day campaigns. There are other ways too. But the most effective way to win in this year, during this year, is to create such a high-quality game or application that the gamers out there go, oh my god, I need to try this out. I need to vote for this game, either with my wallet or with my downloads. It also is the most important thing that you can do to convince the platform holder, the company that operates these channels, in Apple's case, App Store, in Google's case, Google Play, to feature yourself. I mean, this is, from a developer's point of view, this is brilliant. There's no way to buy those featured slots on Apple. There's nothing that big publishers with their $100 million of yearly marketing spend can do to convince Apple that you couldn't do if you create an amazing, outstanding application. So a lot of things have changed during this year, and if we look at it, what we as a company, what Remedy is doing about all this, well, that's quite a lot. First of all, earlier this year, we released a spin-off to Alan Wake called Alan Wake's American Nightmare. This is the first game that we've fully self-funded. We've released it on XBLA, we've released it on Steam, on PC later. We've also taken it to retail in Europe and North America. And I have to say the publishing business is an awesome business to be in from a developer's point of view. It's very different, and I'm not just referring to the money part, which isn't half bad either, but it's very different in many ways from the way we used to operate. We get data instantly. On PC, on Steam, we get daily reports about, we get hourly reports about how well our sales are doing. We've never seen this fast feedback loops on any of our earlier console products. In fact, the typical situation for a developer would be that a quarter after sales, you would get your sales reports, and then you could see whether users liked or gamers liked this part or that part. We also can use this feedback for doing updates. We can use this in many ways, and it's quite different from what we've done before. Even more different is our first game on iOS called Death Rally. Death Rally has been a phenomenal experiment for us. We've done more than 12 million downloads. We've done more than 120 million play sessions by gamers around the world. Apple selected it as one of their Hall of Fame choices. It's the game itself is actually developed by a small company in Helsinki called Cornfox Bros and Mountain Sheep, and they've done amazing treatment for the franchise. So there's a lot of learnings that we've noticed with iOS. I think Kari Kope mentioned that earlier, that games are actually turning closer to services. With Death Rally, we've noticed that we put out 9 major updates. We'd like to do more. The remains to be seen for practical purposes whether that's the direction we can take with this game. But the key trend seems to be that it's not about shipping a game anymore. It's what happens after you've shipped that game that's really important. Once you ship your game, and Death Rally's gone to top #1 in I think 82 different countries around the world. It's done tremendously well, but that's only the start. What happens a quarter down the road? What happens 6 months down the road? What happens 9 months down the road? How do you keep the franchise fresh? How do you keep surprising people? How do you do that on a daily basis? In the case of Supercell, probably on an hourly basis, but that's really a big part of the equation nowadays. And it's, again, hugely different from the mindset of, hey, let's create a product and ship that out. So, summing it all up, from a console developer's point of view, the key takeaways for us are clearly that digital distribution, the momentum still, in our opinion, is growing. It's still a wide open market for most of the developers out there, and we hope, especially in Finland, we can take full advantage of this. We do believe that all the building blocks certainly are in place. In fact, we have proof points like Rovio, like Supercell, that have shown that it can even recently be done, starting from scratch. We're also looking at an industry which is in transition. The next generation, the future generation of consoles, is something that the whole industry is waiting, holding their breath. Clearly, that's something that's impacting the PC gaming out there, and for us, for obvious reasons, very important factor. The last thing, though, that we see as maybe a little bit more long-term development is television. If you look at the TVs that are coming out this Christmas, most of them support some kind of application portals already. The intelligent TVs, the smart TVs that Samsung, LGs of the world are bringing out this Christmas are more sophisticated versions of what we've seen before. One way or another, we do expect that living room is going to see same kind of dynamics as what we've seen on mobile phones, as what we're seeing on tablets right now. And for us, that's of course our home playing field, so that's kind of exciting. How will that market shape up? When will it happen? Well, probably in the next 3 to 5 years. It could happen faster than that. But typically these things take time, as Apple's iPhone showed. Even a critical success does take a few years. So we're still looking into that market, watching that space. And the elements that we're searching for is, will someone figure out the input-output mechanisms on TVs? If you do get your content on TV using different kinds of services, how will you access that content? Will it be a Kinect-like integrated solution where you just direct your games using waves or not? Will you use your remote control in a WAN-based setup? We don't really know. We're looking into those things with tremendous interest. How will the content actually be delivered? The application portals do require a set of rules. Will someone create an open application portal like App Store? Will someone be able to get the economics in place? Remains to be seen. And of course, most importantly, what will consumers want to play in their living rooms should the content be available in a financially sensible way? The chances are that those experiences may be quite different from what we've seen today. Each platform seems to have very strict or very distinguished characteristics. What works on one platform doesn't necessarily translate on another, and it's a safe bet to say that it's bound to be something new. We've experimented with Gaikai. We've taken Alan Wake on Gaikai to run on cloud services. It's kind of exciting experiment because you can actually play the full game on a browser at Gaikai website. But what kind of content do people want to play through their TVs in living room? Is it going to be more casual Is it going to be immersive like Battlefields of today? We don't know. So, with those thoughts, I hope you guys as game developers are going to go out there, rock the socks off of everyone else in the international marketplace, and I wish you all luck while you'll be doing it.